The sun was just rising over the distant hills when the alien queen stood on the balcony of her palace, gazing toward the horizon. Her heart was heavy and her mind was crowded with worry. In the past few weeks, her kingdom had faced growing danger. Small attacks had turned into larger threats and her people were frightened. She had sent messages to neighboring kingdoms and allies asking for help, but the replies that came back were cold and empty. Many turned away, afraid to face the growing danger. Some refused outright, saying that helping her would bring them trouble. Others delayed, offering empty promises with no action. The queen felt the weight of disappointment. She had hoped that in a time of real need, others would stand with her. The citizens whispered about betrayal in the streets below. Rumors traveled fast and fear spread faster. Some said the queen had overestimated her friends. Others wondered if anyone would ever answer her call. Guards paced the walls nervously, unsure of what would happen next. The palace felt unusually quiet, almost tense as though it were holding its breath. Inside the throne room, advisors argued in low but angry voices. Each of them had an opinion, yet none could find a solution. "No one will come," one advisor said, shaking his head. "Even if they hear the call, they will not act." Another advisor replied, "We must prepare ourselves. We cannot rely on outsiders. We must protect our people alone." The queen listened, but she knew her people needed more than her words and her own strength. Amid all this doubt, far away from the palace, a single human warrior was living an ordinary life. He had heard of the queen before, through stories that traveled across lands. People spoke of her wisdom and her fairness, and they spoke of the danger she now faced. But most ignored it. Many dismissed her pleas as distant problems, thinking they had no reason to get involved. The human warrior, however, was different. He did not think about danger in the same way others did. Courage and honor guided his choices. When he learned of the queen's call for help, something stirred deep within him. He did not think of reward or recognition. He did not think of fear or failure. He thought only of the people who depended on her and the duty to help when no one else would. He prepared quickly. He gathered only what he needed: his trusted weapons, a few supplies for the journey, and a small bag of essentials. He checked his equipment carefully. Everything had to be ready for the journey ahead, for he knew it would not be easy. This was not a simple trip. Between him and the queen were deserts, mountains, and forests that few dared to cross. Stories told of harsh weather, dangerous creatures, and rough terrain. Yet he did not hesitate. In his mind, hesitation would be failure. He believed that courage was more than fighting enemies. It was moving forward when others turned away. As he mounted his horse and began the journey, the early morning wind brushed against his face. The world was quiet, almost as if it was waiting for him to act. He rode past villages where people were starting their day, unaware of the danger that loomed over the distant kingdom. Some looked at him curiously, wondering why a lone human would travel such a long path with such determination. He did not stop to explain. Words were not needed. His actions were the answer, the proof that someone could rise above fear. Days passed, and the journey tested him in ways he had never imagined. The first challenge was the desert. The sun blazed in the sky and the sand stretched endlessly. The heat was harsh and the water was scarce. He felt his strength waning, but he reminded himself of the queen waiting for help. He slowed his pace but did not stop. Each step forward was a choice, a decision to continue when most would have turned back. Nights in the desert were cold, the temperature dropping sharply. He built small fires, ate the little he carried, and rested briefly. Sleep was hard to find, for the weight of responsibility rested on his shoulders. Yet he continued, driven by determination that no hardship could shake. After the desert, mountains awaited. Jagged rocks rose like giants, and the paths were narrow and dangerous. One wrong step could have meant a fatal fall. The warrior climbed carefully, using his experience and skill to navigate the cliffs. The wind howled around him, and snow began to fall at higher heights. Each step was laborious, yet he pressed on, imagining the queen's worried face and her people needing him. He remembered the stories he had heard of her wisdom and the strength of her kingdom. He believed that reaching her was not only a test of courage, but also of hope for those who could not fight for themselves. During his journey, he encountered signs of the queen's struggles. Villages on the outskirts of her kingdom were under attack from raiders and small enemy groups. He helped where he could, offering protection and aid. Each small action reminded him of the larger mission, Helping one person at a time was not the full answer, but it was part of the way forward. Villagers spoke of the queen with respect and worry. They said that she had sent messages to many, yet most turned away. They told him how the palace walls were weakening under pressure, how the people's hope was fading. Listening to these stories, the warrior felt the weight of the task ahead. It was greater than he imagined, yet he refused to let fear stop him. Finally, after weeks of travel, the horizon began to show signs of the palace. Towers rose in the distance, shimmering under the sun. The warrior's heart beat faster, not out of fear, but in recognition of the mission's importance. He rode steadily, knowing that the journey was only halfway complete. The real challenge awaited inside the palace walls. Yet he felt ready. His preparation, his journey, and his courage had all led to this moment. He knew that while others had turned away, he had chosen to act. That choice, he understood, was what made a difference. As he approached the gates, the queen watched from above, her eyes scanning the horizon. For a moment, she could not believe what she saw. A single figure approached, human, alone, and determined. Her heart lifted slightly, hope sparking where doubt had reigned. Perhaps help had arrived after all. Perhaps courage still existed in the world. The warrior did not know her gaze, nor did he seek it. He focused on the task at hand, preparing himself for what lay beyond the gates. He was ready to face the palace's challenges, to stand firm and to act when no one else had. The sun reached its peak, casting long shadows across the palace grounds. The streets were quiet, the citizens watching the lone figure with curiosity and cautious hope. Inside the palace, the queen's advisors whispered, questioning if a single human could truly make a difference. The warrior dismounted, tying his horse securely, and took a deep breath. Each step he took toward the palace doors was deliberate, carrying the weight of responsibility, courage, and determination. He did not know what awaited him inside, but he knew one thing clearly. While everyone else had turned away, he had answered the call. And that choice, he believed, could change everything. The human warrior stood at the gates of the queen's palace, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. The walls were tall and imposing, yet his resolve did not waver. He could feel the tension in the air, the quiet fear that had settled over the city like a shadow. Citizens peeked from behind windows and corners, curious but too cautious to approach. The warrior did not seek attention. He simply prepared to do what needed to be done. He knew that the real challenge was just beginning. His journey across deserts, mountains, and forests had brought him here, but reaching the palace was only the first step. As he moved through the palace grounds, he noticed the signs of struggle. Guards were scattered, some standing with worried expressions, others pacing nervously. The walls had cracks and the gates bore marks of previous attacks. It was clear that the queen's kingdom had been under pressure for a long time. Yet the warrior did not falter. He understood that fear could only be overcome with courage and action. He observed the guards quietly, noticing who was ready to fight and who had lost hope. Without hesitation, he approached them, offering guidance and reassurance. "We can protect the palace," he said calmly, "if we stand together." His words were simple, but they carried strength, and slowly the guards straightened, their confidence returning. Inside the palace, the queen watched from her balcony. Her eyes followed the lone human as he moved with purpose. She had expected that no one would come, that her call for help would be ignored once more. But here he was, a single figure moving through the palace grounds with determination and courage. For the first time in weeks, a small spark of hope grew in her heart. Could one person truly make a difference? She did not know yet, but she felt that perhaps he could. The warrior made his way to the inner courtyard, where the advisors and senior guards had gathered. Their faces reflected worry and doubt. When they saw him, a few murmured among themselves. "Who is this human?" one asked. "Can he truly help us?" Another shook his head, skeptical. The warrior did not respond to their questions with words. Instead, he moved with confidence, assessing the palace layout, the guards' positions, and the areas most at risk. His eyes were sharp, noticing even the smallest details that others had missed. It was clear that he was not here by chance. He was here with purpose, and that purpose was to protect the queen and her kingdom. The queen descended from her balcony, walking carefully through the halls toward the courtyard. Her presence was calm yet authoritative. When she reached the warrior, she studied him closely. "You are far from home," she said quietly. "And yet you have come. Why?" The warrior looked at her with steady eyes. "Because your people need help," he replied simply. Because courage should not wait for others to act. Because when no one else answers, someone must. His answer was honest and direct. The queen felt a mix of surprise and relief. His words carried truth and determination, qualities she had not seen in many others. Together they moved through the palace, planning how to address the threats outside and within. The warrior spoke calmly to the advisors and guards, suggesting strategies and organizing defenses. He encouraged each person, reminding them of their strengths and their duty to protect the queen. Slowly, the atmosphere in the palace began to shift. Fear was still present, but hope was growing. Citizens and guards alike began to believe that the palace could survive, that courage could overcome fear. As the day continued, reports came in from the outskirts of the kingdom. Enemy forces had been spotted near key villages, and the queen's people were in danger. The warrior did not hesitate. He prepared a small group of guards and set out to lead a protective mission. Along the way, he demonstrated both skill and leadership. He moved with confidence, guiding the guards safely through difficult terrain, avoiding traps and responding quickly to any threat. Villagers watched from a distance, astonished at the bravery of this lone human. His presence inspired not only the guards but also the people he protected. During their journey, the warrior encountered several challenges. A narrow bridge over a deep river had been damaged, making crossing dangerous. He led the guards carefully, using ropes and ingenuity to ensure everyone's safety. Later, a small enemy scouting group appeared. The warrior coordinated a quiet and strategic approach, avoiding unnecessary confrontation while keeping the villagers and guards safe. Each success strengthened the confidence of those around him. They began to see that courage was contagious, that one person's determination could give strength to many. As evening fell, the warrior returned to the palace with the guards and villagers he had protected. The queen was waiting, her expression a mixture of concern and admiration. "You have done much today," she said softly, "and yet I fear the challenges are only beginning." The warrior nodded. "I understand," he replied. "But we have begun. That is the first step. Fear can be overcome if we act with courage and unity." His words were simple, yet they carried power. They reminded the queen and her advisors that action, even by a single person, could change the course of events. That night, the palace was quiet but no longer tense. Guards took their posts with renewed vigilance, and citizens whispered of the warrior's bravery. The queen reflected on the events of the day. She had been prepared for disappointment, for failure, for continued fear. Instead, she had witnessed something remarkable. A single human acting with courage and purpose had begun to restore hope to her kingdom. She realized that true strength was not in numbers alone, but in the willingness to act when others would not. The warrior spent the night preparing for the days ahead. He reviewed the palace's defenses, spoke with the guards, and listened to the advisors. Each conversation was purposeful, each action directed toward protecting the queen and her people. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult. There would be tests of courage, moments of doubt, and threats that could not be ignored. Yet he was ready. His resolve was unwavering, his focus clear. While others had turned away, he had answered the call. That choice, he believed, could change the fate of the entire kingdom. By the next morning, the palace grounds were alive with a sense of purpose. The human warrior moved with quiet confidence, preparing the people for what was to come. The queen observed from above, her hope growing with each passing moment. She realized that the presence of this one person had already begun to shift the balance. Courage, action, and determination had returned to a place where fear had reigned. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, it seemed to shine on a new possibility, that even in the darkest times, one person's bravery could make a difference. The warrior's journey was far from over. Challenges awaited, battles would need to be faced, and the queen's kingdom would require steadfast protection. But for the first time in weeks, the people dared to believe. They dared to hope. And in the midst of fear and uncertainty, a single human had shown them that courage could rise where others had turned away. The morning light spilled over the palace walls, casting long shadows across the courtyards and towers. The human warrior was already awake, moving quietly through the halls. He had spent the night reviewing the palace's layout and speaking with the guards. While the previous day had been successful in giving hope to the people, he knew that the real challenges were still ahead. The palace was not safe yet. There were threats both outside and inside its walls. The warrior understood that courage alone was not enough. Careful planning and calm thinking were necessary to protect the queen and her people. As he walked through the corridors, he noticed the tension in the guards' faces. Some had regained confidence after witnessing his leadership, but others were still fearful. They had grown used to waiting for help that never came. The warrior paused to speak with a few of them, sharing words of encouragement. "Stay alert," he said, "but do not let fear control your actions. You are strong, and together we can protect this place." His words were simple, yet they carried authority. The guards listened, nodding slowly, their posture straightening. For the first time in many days, they felt that they were not alone. Someone was here to guide them, someone who would not turn away. Meanwhile, the queen observed the warrior from her balcony. She had watched him for hours, noting how he moved among the people and the guards. His presence was steady and calm, yet filled with determination. She could see the effect he had on everyone around him. Even those who had been doubtful or fearful now held their heads higher, ready to act. The queen realized that this one human had already changed the mood of the entire palace. Hope was returning, and with it, the possibility of safety and order. Suddenly, a messenger arrived, running through the halls with urgent news. Villagers near the palace gates reported a small group of intruders attempting to sneak into the city. The guards were nervous, unsure of how to respond. The warrior stepped forward calmly, assessing the situation. "We must act quickly but carefully," he said. "We cannot let fear guide us, only strategy and courage." He organized a group of guards, assigning each a specific task to protect the city and the queen. His instructions were clear and precise, leaving no room for confusion. The group moved swiftly through the palace grounds, reaching the area where the intruders were reported. From a hidden position, the warrior observed the situation. The intruders were small in number but skilled and dangerous. He signaled to the guards to take positions quietly, ensuring that the villagers remained safe. Then, with careful timing, they surrounded the intruders without giving them a chance to escape or cause harm. The operation was quick and precise, avoiding unnecessary conflict and keeping everyone safe. The guards looked at the warrior with admiration, realizing that his calm and strategic approach had prevented chaos. After the threat was neutralized, the warrior returned to the palace with the guards. The queen was waiting in the main hall, her expression a mixture of relief and curiosity. "You handled that well," she said quietly. "But there will be more challenges. The kingdom is under pressure, and many are watching to see if we can withstand it." The warrior nodded. "I understand," he replied. "We cannot control everything, but we can control how we respond. We can protect those who cannot protect themselves. And that will make the difference." His words were honest, grounded in experience and determination. Throughout the day, the warrior continued to move among the guards and citizens, organizing defenses and offering guidance. He noticed the cracks in the palace walls, the signs of previous attacks, and the areas where the people were most vulnerable. Each observation was followed by action, each plan implemented with care. Slowly, the palace began to feel stronger. Guards who had been fearful now stood firm. Citizens who had been anxious now moved with confidence, and the queen felt a growing sense of security. The warrior's presence was changing everything, proving that one person's courage could inspire an entire community. As the sun began to set, the warrior and the queen walked through the palace gardens. The air was cool and calm, a brief moment of peace before the next challenges. The queen spoke softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "I have seen many warriors in my life, but none have acted with such quiet strength. You did not come for glory or reward. You came because it was right." The warrior looked at her and smiled faintly. "Courage is not about seeking recognition," he replied. "It is about doing what is necessary when others will not. Your people needed help, and I chose to act. That is all." That evening, the palace prepared for the night. Guards took positions, villagers returned to their homes, and the queen retired to her chambers with a sense of hope. The warrior remained in the central hall, reviewing plans for the following day. He knew that challenges would continue, that danger was still present, and that he would need to remain vigilant. Yet he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had made a difference. He had inspired hope where there was fear, and he had shown that even a single person, acting with courage and determination, could begin to change the course of events. During the night, the warrior patrolled the palace grounds, moving silently and observing every detail. He noticed the small things that others overlooked. a loose stone on the wall, a gate that needed reinforcement, a guard who seemed nervous. Each detail mattered. Each action he took could prevent disaster. He did not complain or hesitate. His focus was clear, and his purpose was simple: protect the queen and her people no matter the challenge. As dawn approached, the warrior paused at the palace gates, looking out over the city. The first light of morning reflected off the towers, casting a warm glow across the streets. He thought of the journey that had brought him here, of the deserts, mountains, and forests he had crossed. He thought of the villagers he had helped, the guards he had encouraged, and the queen who now looked to him for guidance. His heart was steady. The path ahead would be difficult, but he was ready. While others had turned away, he had answered the call, and now the kingdom could begin to rebuild its courage and strength. The human warrior knew that the story of this day would not be the last. Challenges awaited, new threats would arise, and the queen's people would look to him for guidance. But he felt confident that with courage and careful action, they could overcome anything. One person could make a difference, he knew, and he would continue to stand firm, protecting those who could not protect themselves, leading by example, and inspiring hope in a world that had nearly forgotten it. The sun had just begun to rise over the palace when the human warrior heard the first alarm. A group of enemy scouts had been spotted at the edge of the city, moving quickly toward the palace gates. The guards had seen them too, but fear was evident in their eyes. Some hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Others whispered doubts, thinking the enemy too strong. The warrior, however, did not waver. He moved swiftly, calling the guards to attention and giving clear instructions. "Stand firm," he said. "Do not let fear control you. Protect the queen and her people, and we will face this together." His voice carried calm authority, and slowly the guards moved into position, their confidence returning. The intruders were skilled and determined. They moved quietly, attempting to breach the palace without being noticed. The warrior had anticipated this. He had studied the palace layout and the surrounding area, and he knew where the enemy would try to enter. With careful planning, he positioned the guards to intercept them at the weakest points. Each guard had a role, each path was covered, and each move was calculated to ensure safety. The enemy thought they could catch the palace off guard, but they had underestimated the determination of the lone human who had answered the queen's call. As the enemy advanced, the warrior remained calm, observing their movements. He signaled to the guards to hold their positions, waiting for the right moment to act. Then, with precise timing, he led the defense. The guards moved swiftly, blocking entrances and protecting civilians. The enemy was met with unexpected resistance, and confusion spread among their ranks. The warrior moved with purpose, coordinating actions and giving instructions that allowed the palace to respond effectively. Fear had no place here. Only courage and careful strategy guided their actions. In the central courtyard, the queen watched as the warrior directed the defense. She had seen bravery before, but nothing like this. His movements were calm, confident, and precise. Every action was purposeful, every word carried weight. The guards followed him without hesitation, inspired by his courage. Even the citizens, who had been fearful for weeks, began to emerge from hiding, encouraged by the sight of someone willing to act when others would not. Hope was spreading like wildfire, and it was all because one human had refused to turn away. The battle continued through the morning. Small groups of intruders attempted to breach the palace from different directions, but each time, the warrior and his team were ready. He anticipated their moves, adjusting defenses as needed. He guided the guards to cover vulnerable areas, protect civilians, and respond quickly to any threat. His leadership was steady and unwavering, and it inspired confidence in everyone around him. Even those who had doubted his abilities began to trust him completely. At one point, a section of the outer wall began to crumble under the weight of the attack. The warrior quickly assessed the situation and led a group of guards to reinforce it. Using ropes, supports, and quick thinking, they stabilized the wall just in time. The intruders were unable to exploit the weakness, and the palace remained secure. The queen watched in awe, realizing that the warrior's presence was more than protection. It was guidance, inspiration, and hope all at once. Without him, the palace might have fallen. The intruders tried another approach, attempting to create chaos within the palace itself. They aimed to distract the guards and enter through a side gate. The warrior anticipated this move as well. He positioned guards strategically, ensuring that every entrance was monitored. He moved calmly through the palace halls, coordinating responses and giving clear instructions. When a group of intruders reached the main hall, they were met with a disciplined defense unable to advance further. Their surprise at the organized resistance slowed their attack, giving the palace defenders an advantage. By midday, the tide of the conflict began to shift. The intruders, expecting an easy victory, were now struggling against the coordinated defense. The warriors' calm and precise leadership had turned the situation in favor of the palace. Guards who had been fearful were now confident. Citizens were no longer hiding, and even the queen felt a renewed sense of safety. The warrior did not stop, however. He remained vigilant, moving through the palace, checking on the guards, and ensuring that every vulnerable point was protected. His energy seemed endless, fueled by a sense of duty and courage that inspired all who saw him. During a brief moment of quiet, the warrior spoke to the queen. "The danger is not gone," he said, "but we are stronger now. Your people have seen courage, and that will carry them through the rest of this day. Fear cannot stand where action is taken." The queen nodded, feeling the truth of his words. His presence had transformed the palace from a place of anxiety and doubt into a fortress of courage and hope. She realized that true leadership was not measured by words alone, but by action and the ability to inspire others to act as well. As evening approached, the intruders began to retreat. Their attempts to breach the palace had failed, and their numbers were dwindling. The warrior and his guards remained alert, ensuring that no one could take advantage of the situation. The palace had survived another day, and it was clear that the efforts of one human had made the difference. The queen walked among her people, offering thanks and praise, but her eyes always returned to the warrior. He had not only defended her palace, but had restored faith and courage and unity. That night, the palace was quiet, but the atmosphere was different from before. Guards stood firmly at their posts, citizens felt safer, and the queen retired with a sense of gratitude and hope. The warrior patrolled the grounds, checking every corner and every entrance. He spoke with the guards, offering advice and encouragement, ensuring that the lessons of the day would not be forgotten. Courage, he knew, was contagious, and the palace needed to carry this courage into the days ahead. As the moon rose over the palace, the warrior paused at the central courtyard. He looked up at the stars, thinking of the journey that had brought him here. The deserts, mountains, forests, and challenges along the way had all led to this moment. The palace was safe for now, but the future would bring more challenges. He understood that his duty was ongoing, that he would need to remain vigilant, calm, and courageous. But he also knew that the people had learned something important. Even when everyone else turns away, a single person's courage can change everything. In the quiet of the night, the queen watched from her balcony. She reflected on the events of the day, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and admiration. The warrior had done more than defend the palace. He had inspired hope and confidence. He had reminded her and her people that courage could overcome fear, that action could replace doubt, and that leadership was shown through deeds, not words alone. She realized that this human had changed the course of her kingdom, and she felt a quiet relief knowing that he would continue to stand by her side. The human warrior remained in the courtyard long after the palace had settled into calm. He reviewed the positions of the guards, checked on the security of the walls, and ensured that the people were safe. His mind was always alert, always planning for the next challenge. Yet he felt a quiet satisfaction. Today he had made a difference. He had stood firm when others would have turned away, and through his courage and careful action, the queen's palace had survived. The story of one person's bravery was unfolding, and its effects would be felt for days, weeks, and perhaps even years to come. As dawn approached again, the warrior prepared for the new day. He knew that challenges would continue, but he was ready. The palace, the queen, and the people had learned something vital, that courage, leadership, and action were more powerful than fear, hesitation, and doubt. And he, the lone human who had answered the call when no one else would remain steadfast, ready to protect, lead, and inspire whenever needed. The morning air was calm, yet the human warrior remained alert. The previous days had been intense, filled with danger, strategy, and courage. The palace had survived attacks, its people had regained hope, and the queen herself felt safer than she had in weeks. But the warrior knew that the job was not complete. True protection required vigilance, and he could not let his guard down. He moved quietly through the palace halls, checking on the guards, ensuring that all positions were secure, and speaking with citizens who had questions or concerns. His presence had become a symbol of stability, and everyone around him felt reassured. The queen approached him in the central hall, her expression reflecting gratitude and admiration. "You have done more than I could have imagined," she said softly. "Your courage has protected not only this palace but the hearts of my people." The warrior looked at her calmly. "I only did what was necessary," he replied. "Courage is not for reward. It is for those who cannot protect themselves. Your people needed help and I chose to act." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of truth. The queen felt a deep sense of respect for him, knowing that his actions had gone far beyond what anyone could have expected. The day began with a meeting in the palace courtyard. Advisors, guards, and citizens gathered to discuss plans for the kingdom's future. The warrior listened carefully, offering guidance where needed but allowing others to contribute their ideas as well. His goal was not to control but to strengthen, to empower the people to act with confidence and responsibility. Slowly, the mood shifted from fear to determination. Citizens spoke of rebuilding, of protecting one another, and of supporting the queen. Guards shared strategies and learned from the warrior's experience. It was clear that the kingdom was changing, growing stronger because one person had dared to stand firm. Suddenly, a messenger arrived from a distant village. They reported that a group of travelers had been saved from danger thanks to the warrior's previous guidance. The villagers had seen his actions and taken inspiration from them. Word spread quickly, reaching every corner of the kingdom. People began to believe in the power of courage and the importance of helping one another. The warrior had shown them that even a single individual could make a difference, and that lesson was spreading like wildfire. The queen listened to these reports with pride, realizing that her people were regaining both strength and faith. As the day continued, the warrior moved throughout the palace, checking every corner and speaking with the guards. He reminded them to stay vigilant, to act with courage, and to help those who needed guidance. Even small acts of leadership and kindness were important. Each conversation, each gesture reinforced the message that bravery was not just about facing enemies, but about standing firm, helping others, and making wise choices. Slowly, the palace transformed into a place of confidence, its people no longer paralyzed by fear. By evening, the queen called a ceremony to honor those who had defended the kingdom. She invited the warrior to stand beside her in front of the gathered citizens and guards. Her voice was calm yet filled with emotion as she spoke. "This kingdom has faced fear and uncertainty," she said. "Many turned away, but one stood firm. One person answered the call when no one else would. This human warrior has shown us the true meaning of courage, loyalty, and action. He has protected us all, and for that, we are grateful." The citizens cheered, and the guards stood at attention, showing their respect. The warrior remained humble, bowing slightly but saying nothing. Recognition was not why he had come, and he did not seek praise. Still, he felt the satisfaction of knowing that his actions had inspired hope and courage. The queen approached him privately afterward, her expression serious yet kind. "Your bravery has changed everything," she said. "The kingdom is stronger because of you, and the people will not forget what you have done." The warrior nodded. "I only did what I could," he replied. "The strength was always within your people. I only reminded them of it." That night the palace was calm. The guards patrolled the walls, citizens rested safely in their homes, and the queen reflected on the past days. She realized that leadership and protection were more than commands and walls. They were about action, courage, and the willingness to stand when others would not. The human warrior had not only defended the palace but had taught her people an invaluable lesson: that one person's courage could inspire an entire kingdom. The warrior, meanwhile, continued to check the palace and the surrounding grounds. His focus was never on recognition, wealth, or reward. He had come because it was the right thing to do. As he walked through the quiet courtyards, he thought of the journey that had brought him here, from distant lands, across deserts, mountains, and forests, to the gates of the palace. He had faced fear, hardship, and uncertainty, yet each step had strengthened his resolve and brought him closer to his purpose. And now, seeing the results of his actions, he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. In the days that followed, the kingdom began to recover. Villages that had been fearful rebuilt their homes. Citizens who had been anxious moved with confidence, helping one another and protecting the weak. Guards who had been doubtful acted with courage, inspired by the example of the human warrior. The queen watched these changes with a mixture of pride and gratitude, knowing that her people had learned something invaluable. Courage was contagious, and one person's actions had sparked a wave of hope and determination throughout the kingdom. The warrior remained for a while longer, ensuring that the palace and the city were fully secure. He continued to advise, guide, and encourage, but he also knew that his presence would not always be necessary. The lessons he had shared had taken root in the hearts of the queen's people. They had seen courage, learned strategy, and understood the importance of standing firm. The warrior realized that the greatest part of his mission was not only protection, but inspiration. He had shown that action, honesty, and bravery could change the outcome of even the darkest situations. Finally, the time came for him to leave the palace. The queen and her people gathered to bid him farewell. "You have done more than anyone could have imagined," the queen said. "Your courage has saved lives, restored hope, and reminded us of what is possible when one person stands firm. We will never forget you." The warrior smiled faintly. "The people had the strength all along," he said. "I only helped them remember it." With that, he mounted his horse and began his journey home, leaving behind a kingdom transformed by hope, courage, and determination. As he disappeared into the horizon, the citizens looked to one another, realizing that they had learned something extraordinary. Courage could be found in unexpected places, and even when everyone else turned away, one person's choice to act could change everything. The queen stood on her balcony watching the sun set over her kingdom, her heart full of gratitude. The story of the human warrior would be told for generations, a story of bravery, leadership, and the power of answering the call when no one else would. The kingdom remained strong, its people vigilant yet confident. Guards patrolled with purpose, citizens helped one another, and the queen led with renewed wisdom and hope. And far away, the human warrior rode quietly through the lands, knowing that he had done what he came to do. One person had made a difference, and the effects would be felt for years to come. Courage, he had shown, was not measured by numbers or strength alone, but by the willingness to act when others turned away. And in that lesson, the kingdom and the world found hope.